Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Morbid Minecraft. This is episode 3 and is brought to you on a different Minecraft world. We are now in 1.21.4. What you will notice is that episode 2 and episode 4 are unfortunately on a previous world, 1.20. We started a new world, and this episode was supposed to be saved for a friend of mine. But unfortunately, things fell through, and then life happened for the last year and a half, and I got out of recording, streaming all of that. But obviously, we still need to record episode 3, so there's a little continuity error, but hopefully, we can move past that because this is a great episode. We are back with Ash and Elena. This is episode 3 on their podcast as well. So, this is about the Dyatlov Pass Incident. Reminders that the audio for their podcast is not great because it is a brand new podcast at this point, back in 2018 when they started. So several years ago now, but still great content. So let's go ahead and begin.
Hey weirdos, I'm Elena.
I'm Ash.
And this is Morbid. Alright, so this week is going to be a little different from last week. Last week we talked about Big Ed.
Big old Eddie.
And this week we're kind of taking a sidestep.
Yeah.
Into the Siberian wilderness.
Hashtag Soviet Union.
So it's kind of a big sidestep.
Yeah. A side leap, if you will.
A side leap. This week we're going to be talking about the Dyatlov Pass Incident. Or it could be the Dyatlov, or it could be the Dyatlov.
I don't think that it's What's the first one you said?
Dyatlov.
I don't think it's that because the L comes after the T.
I know, I thought that too, but then I've heard it called that before, so I think I'm just being American and I'm following what everyone else says.
I think it's Dyatlov.
Yeah,
it's like a diet that you love. Dyatlov.
Wow. That's actually a really good way of saying that now that I'm looking at the word.
Right?
It kind of makes sense. So, Dyatlov?
Dyatlov. How was that?
Dyatlov Pass Incident. So we're going to sound super Russian every time we say it.
I don't think we actually will.
Hell, we might say it different every single time. It's going to be said a lot. So this is like spooky as fuck.
I'm not gonna lie, I was spooked researching. I was spooked on the drive here, on the way up the stairs to where we're podcasting, and I'm spooked right now.
It's one of those things that like it's super spooky, but if you don't hike into the Siberian wilderness, you might not have to deal with this. So this might be one for everybody.
That's a good takeaway from this. Don't hike into the Soviet Union of Russia.
It's really a good life rule.
I just said the Soviet Union of Russia. I'll leave now. Goodbye.
That's your IQ of 12 speaking.
Hey, I told you.
Look at me just calling back to last week. Just calling it back. Just calling it back. If you want to know what that joke is, go listen to last week's episode.
Or else you won't know.
Before we get started, I thought it would kind of be fun to talk about something spooky that happened this week, because something spooky did happen this week. Ashley doesn't even know what I'm talking about right now.
Nope, I just looked at her with a furrowed ass
she's
brow.
going to be right in here with all of you. So this week, around us, in Ashley, if you're from Massachusetts, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Unless you're Ashley.
Unless you're Ashley. Off of 495 this week. Near Mansfield and Norton.
Bridgewater Triangle?
I don't know if it's part of the Bridgewater. We're part of the Bridgewater Triangle. Yeah. Ooh, we'll definitely do that on an episode for sure.
Oh, good looks.
So there was a ton of traffic. Like, my husband got caught in it.
Yeah, me too.
People I know got caught in it.
On Wednesday night?
On Wednesday night. So you want to know what happened?
Yeah, I do.
So what happened was the state police got a ton of calls in, and all of them were saying that they saw a woman carrying a lifeless child into the woods.
I just got the most amount of goosebumps that I've ever gotten in my life.
Because when I heard this and read this, I was so spooked out just by thinking of this happening.
So I drove by that.
Several people called with this same thing. A woman is carrying a lifeless child into the woods.
I don't even know if I want to hear the rest.
Well, so they had police helicopters, they had helicopters searching the area because they were like, now we need to find. They found nothing. Several people said
Annie's not going to sleep
that
tonight.
She's looking
over at us.
So I don't know if it was like mistaken what people saw and maybe she was carrying something else. I don't know. Maybe people. I have no idea. But no matter what, they didn't find anything.
I'm so glad I wasn't one of those people and that I had to work late and got caught in the back.
Well, because I'm wondering, like, why didn't anyone take a picture? I would snap a photo of that and then I'd call the police and be like, I just saw this. Or I'd pull over down the street and be like, hey, I feel like I couldn't go by it, but again, I wasn't there, so maybe I would have just driven by. But
the picture in my mind right now is so spooky.
Right, the picture in my mind is super spooky too. That's why I had to share it. I thought this was just too spooky to not share. So, well, the good news is they didn't find the woman and they didn't find a lifeless child. So that's the good
Annie's
news.
listening in the corner, and I bet she wishes that her podcast that she was listening to was turned up a little more because she said she wasn't going to listen to us.
And
How do you feel now, Annie?
The best part about this is I looked over in the corner and Annie just suddenly sat up and started listening intently.
She's like, why the traffic? Oh, fuck, I don't want to know anymore.
I'm part of this now.
Can I unknow things?
Sorry, I just brought you all into my spooky ass world.
Wow,
but
I was in that traffic.
And I've been dealing with this image in my mind for a week and I felt like I needed to share it with everybody.
Nightmares.
So, you're welcome for that.
Sleep tight.
If you see any women carrying lifeless children into the woods, call the police. Maybe snap a photo if you can.
Don't pull over.
I mean, don't pull over, that's dumb, but...
Yeah.
But maybe snap a photo.
Yeah. Snap a pic.
You know, I would want to see where she was going. So, you know, there's that.
So why did they just release that that's what happened?
Yeah, they released that that's why, like, there was so much backup and there was, like, police helicopters and activity.
There was helicopters everywhere.
Yeah.
And I literally said, something must be going on.
Yep, it was that. So, and they did release that, like, nothing was found. They searched for hours, so they didn't find anything.
Imagine being the, like, people that had to search for that.
And the people, imagine being the people who saw it. And then we're like, no, I saw that. Like, and several people said the same thing.
They're not sleeping.
Yeah, it's kind of bananas. But
I'm so spooky.
So, that kind of segues perfectly into our super spooky topic.
Oh my gosh, it does.
So, this one goes way back. We're taking a trip in the Wayback Machine for this one. It's back in January of 1959. When a young 23-year-old man named Igor, pause for reaction, Dyatlov, because I'm going to go with that from now on, Dyatlov, Igor Dyatlov led 9 hikers into the Ural Mountains of Siberia. The group had 7 men and 2 women, and most of them were university students or engineers.
So they were pretty young.
Yeah, they were young, they were in their 20s, like early 20s.
Yeah.
They were all super smart, super experienced hikers. Like super experienced hikers. They all had been on several excursions. They were like wilderness survival people. So they knew what they were doing.
Now?
So I'm gonna go through their names and I can't promise you that this is how they're gonna say them. So what's funny to me is there's several Yuris.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, there's a lot of Yuris.
I think Yuri is a nickname though, actually.
No, I think it's an actual name.
Oh, where I found it, the guy's name was Yuri, and then in parentheses it said it maybe looks like Georgie, but it's Georgiy.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Yeah,
but maybe it is a nickname. Maybe you're right.
I'm not from Russia.
So here I'm going to try to get through these. So let's see. Yuri Doroshenko, Yuri Krivonenchenko, Igor Dyatlov, Zenaida Kolmogorova,
Love it.
Rustam Slobodin, Ludmila Dubanina, Seaman Zolotarev, who also went by Sasha or Alexander, and I kind of see why. Alexander Kolovatov, and Nikolai Thibodeau Brignolo.
Yes, exactly. We're not laughing at your names.
No. We're
just trying to pronounce them.
This is gonna be a tough one.
We are
There's a lot of scary
stupid
names in this.
Americans.
We are definitely dumb Americans, so just go with us. So the goal of this whole hike that they were taking back in 1959 was to reach Mount Ortorton, which translates to "Don't go there."
No way! I didn't know that. So I did like the basicest amount of research, and I was like, I'm just gonna sit here and comment for the most part.
Hashtag basicest.
Hashtag I'm such a millennial.
So there's like a local tribe called the Mansi tribe. Or Mansi. I'm gonna go with Mansi, that sounds better. The Mansi tribe. In their language, this mountain peak translates to, like, roughly to "don't go there." Which is
Sounds
a pretty...
like a warning sign.
It's a pretty good warning to heed, I would say. Because they're not, like, having you guess. Like, maybe should we go there?
It's not.
Maybe we
it
should.
doesn't translate into maybe come here. Or
Yeah.
come here.
Maybe
come here. Maybe there's spearmint at the top.
Yeah, it doesn't translate to, like, sometimes bad things happen here, but sometimes
But mostly not.
you get cake. Like,
Yeah.
it's literally like, just don't
Do
go here.
not
Like,
come here.
Yeah, just, so my advice to everybody, just listen to that.
But that's not what happened. They went there.
They did not listen to that. So, the trip was going to be a 350-kilometer ski trip.
What does that translate to? Do you know?
Did not do the math.
Bad.
But maybe I will later.
Maybe
and I'll
someone
add
will
it
comment
in. Or somebody can let me know. But whatever, it's a good trip. Like I said, all these skiers and hikers were like super experienced. So this was not supposed to be something that was gonna be a
Have
big
any
problem
trouble.
or have any kind of trouble. I mean, it was gonna be a tough trip, but they were ready for it.
Right.
There was only one survivor of this trip, and his name was Yuri Yudin. Yuri Yudin survived because he happened to fall ill and stayed at the last place that they were all seen alive, which was like this little village settlement.
But he's glad he got sick that day.
Yeah, and Yuri has a lot of information. We'll see later that Yuri kind of started piecing some things together for everybody a little bit.
Didn't come up with that in my basic research.
In your basicest research.
And my most basicest research.
And Yuri actually said that he recalls hearing a conversation when they were at that village between Igor Dyatlov and a member, Igor, who was like kind of the leader of this whole shebang, and a member of this village, where the two of them were talking about it, and it looked like Igor was being warned about something, but he couldn't make out exactly what it was. I'm gonna really step out on a limb here, and I'm gonna go with maybe that he was being warned about going to the place that translates to don't go there.
Maybe.
I mean, like, maybe.
I'm not gonna say, like, factual.
I mean, who knows? We weren't there.
Nope, not a time
But if you're gonna warn something like that, it's probably gonna be about the place that is called Don't Go There.
Yeah.
So obviously he did not heed that warning.
He went there.
If that's what it was. He definitely went there. So everything was pretty good for a while. This group took a lot of pictures. They kept a ton of journals. And they were following a specific Mansi trail that was set out for them. Right. So this was a trail that was already set out. The last diary entries from all of them were like super happy, super carefree. They talked about the weather, but you know, they were just like, the weather sucks here because it's in Siberia. But you know, it was just, that's it. It was all about the weather and the trail conditions being kind of tough. But other than that, they were like, we're having fun, everything's great, we're Russian. And they even created their own newspaper. Yes. Which is adorable, called the Evening Ortorton.
I love that.
What is terrifying about this is one of the last things the headline was, from now on we know that the snowmen exist. So
hate that.
The word that comes to mind is ominous, because that could either be super adorable and like, we snowmen exist, fun, Siberia, or it could be, there's fucking angry Yeti here and we know they exist now. So
we've just begun. I'm so spooked already.
And after you hear everything that happened to them, that's gonna sound a hell of a lot more ominous.
Yeah.
So if you have a delightful, like, whimsical image in your
Don't
head right
go
now.
there.
Keep it in mind for a little while, but it's gonna leave.
Yeah.
So, February 1st is when they made the decision to set up camp. They ended up setting up camp on the bottom of the mountain slope on the flanks of a mountain called Dead Mountain. Or Mountain of the Dead. So,
I'm sorry, there's a lot of coincidence happening here.
There's just a lot of things working against having a fun time, I feel.
Right.
The whole don't go there, Dead Mountain, snowmen exist.
Was it called that back then, or were people doing it?
It was, no, this is like translated from, from the first one is translated from the Manzi language, and then this one was called Dead Mountain. Wow. So solid choice to set up camp there. Solid choice, guys. So I looked up some information on like where they set up camp because I know shit all about camping and hiking and all that.
No.
Especially on a mountain. I don't know where to put a tent. I'd put a tent anywhere.
I don't even care.
Yeah. I do nothing of the sort.
No.
So apparently the slope of a mountain is a really bad idea to set up camp.
Well, that does make sense.
It does make sense when you think about
avalanche?
it. There's the remote possibility of avalanche. And specifically in the Siberian wilderness, they're pretty common.
Yeah.
Although I guess this place isn't especially prone to avalanches.
Right, I
saw.
read that. It had been like a very long time.
But also, like, the thing that sucks about the slope is that cold air will settle at the lowest point, like in valleys and such, which are a bad idea. So in the slope, you're getting all the really cold air.
Right.
Like, it's all shooting down there. And it's an average of negative 6 degrees in January here. And that's during the day. So at night, it's going to drop to, like, negative 20. So that was already kind of an odd choice. And especially since Dyatlov was such a experienced hiker, and all these people were such experienced hikers, they kind of wondered why that would happen. Later, Yuri said that maybe either he didn't want to lose the progress they had already made by going back down to the tree line,
right,
which was I think a mile away,
or he just wanted to try it,
or he wanted to try it out. Yeah, like he just kind of wanted to test and experience it and see how he would fare, which was bad. Spoiler alert. But so it was on February 12th that this group was supposed to make contact with Yuri again. And they were supposed to kind of like update everybody.
That decisions have been made.
With Yudin again. That's what they told him, at least. They did not make contact with him.
No.
So by February 20th, that's when family members and friends started getting nervous because they were willing to let a few days go past the day they were supposed to hear from them because obviously with trips like this, you're not going to be right on schedule.
Yeah, exactly.
So it wasn't until February 26th is when the camp was finally found by search and rescuers.
Basically a month afterwards.
Yeah, and it was by volunteer searchers, and also the military got involved. Like they brought in helicopters and all that.
Whoa.
So the things that were found are very bizarre. They're very bizarre. So the first thing that was found was in the campsite. They found the tents that they were sleeping in, and they were shredded apart from the inside. Yeah.
That is so unsettling.
So these people were frantic to get out of these tents.
Right.
They didn't unzip the tents, and they didn't do anything.
Shredded.
They shredded them from the inside to get out. So, what the hell came that quick and that scary that they had to get the hell out of there so fast?
I don't want to know.
I don't even know. So all of them ran out of the tents towards first of all, it looked like all of their footprints went in different directions.
And they were barefoot.
So they were kind of, and all of them were either barefoot
or just
wearing socks, and I think only one of them had one shoe on. Which, it was, by this point, in the middle of the night, it would have been negative 24 degrees out.
Oh my god.
Again, experienced survivalists, hikers, all that good stuff, they would know that that is completely ridiculous to do in negative 24 degree weather.
Right.
So something had to have literally
scared the
threatened
shit out of them.
Their lives in the immediate, exactly. So it's like something had to have been happening right now where they had to make the decision
to just get out of there.
We either put on shoes and we die here, or we run and we try to make it. It's insane. So It was over 1 mile away from the tent that the first 2 bodies were found. These 2 bodies ended up belonging to, I'm just going to go by their last names right now, from now on. This is belonging to Doroshenko and Krivonenchenko. They were found lying perfectly side by side and wearing only their underwear.
Weird.
No shoes, nothing else. That's insane. I don't even know why they would be just in their underwear at any point during this
Right,
trip.
it's not even like you're like...
I'll tell you
Like
what.
you're not
Sleep naked,
sleeping
like,
in their
I am
underwear.
not meant to hold on to these today.
So
Freezing all the
why? Like, that's insane. They were found under a tree. I believe it was a cedar tree. And branches very high up in the tree, like 15 feet up, were broken, like all cracked
like
off.
they had climbed up the tree.
And you could say like maybe it got broken by elements or whatever, but investigators also found traces of human skin and blood left in the bark leading up to those broken branches.
Oh my.
So it seems like they were frantically crawling up this tree trying to climb the tree.
Get away from something.
And their hands were like bloody messes, like they were trying to clearly they left some of them in the bark. So they were really trying to get up this tree as fast as they could. It looks like there was a remains of a fire, which is even weirder because they're frantically trying to get up this tree. They're running away in their underwear, and then they make a fire. So that's weird. Doronchenko was found with burns on the side of his head.
Yeah.
His ears, nose, and lips were covered in blood. He had multiple abrasions and bruises on his arms and legs and torso. And there was also a foamy gray discharge that seemed to come from his mouth and was left on his cheek. And you would think like maybe that's just like, putrefaction like after death. But doctors later said that this could be the result of something causing great pressure on his chest and causing that discharge to come up. Krivonenchenko had bruises on his forehead and his left temporal bone, bruises on his chest, legs, and hands. He had pieces of skin that had ripped off the tops of his hands, and pieces of the skin, the epidermis that was on top of his hands, were found inside his mouth.
I don't even know how to react to that.
I have nothing. I don't even know what to say about that.
I just can't imagine being one of the investigators for this
You're
case
trying to
and
figure out what the
like,
hell's going on.
This doesn't make any sense.
Well, and it
whatsoever.
sounds like they kind of tried to cover some stuff up, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, Krivonenchenko also had a burn on his left leg.
Huh.
So weird. And it's like, so did they just sit in their underwear by the fire after they tried to get up a tree? Did they try to get up the tree afterwards?
I don't know.
Did they stick their heads in the fire to get burned? Did they play patty cake with the fire? Burn their hand? I don't understand what.
No.
So that's a whole bunch of craziness. A little bit away from these 2 bodies, they found 3 more bodies, including Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin.
Are these the ones that were all basically almost exactly 200 meters apart?
Yeah, they were very close. They were very really
in specific
yeah.
areas.
They were found like they were going towards the campsite, like they were running back towards the campsite.
Huh.
I think they were at distances of 300, 480, and 630 meters from the cedar tree, like in between the campsite and the cedar tree. Yeah, very specific and very weird. So it looked like they fell dead as they were trying to run back to the campsite. Dyatlov, Igor the leader, was found face up. He was obviously frozen with weather and rigor, and he was clutching a birch branch in his hand, and his other arm was shielding his face from something. And it was frozen like that. So he was holding a birch branch, like he was fending something off. He was also found with a photo of Kolmogorova because they were dating.
I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I'm not fucking okay.
I know. They were dating. He had a picture of her
No.
on his person. So it's like, did he
Did he
run
have
out of the
clothes on?
tent and grab? I don't know if he had actually clothes.
God,
He
did
did have
he?
clothes on.
Did he run out of the tent and make sure her
I wonder, or if it was just in his pocket, but I think they had some clothes on.
Just the fact that he had, I can't. I'm done.
I know, right? He had no internal injuries at all, and his cause of death was hypothermia. The next person who was found in that, that whole thing of 3 people was Rustam Slobodin. He had some of the weirdest injuries.
Okay, yeah.
He was he's got some weird ones. They said he was lying face down in the snow. He had bloody discharge from his nose, swelling and weird bruises and abrasions on the right side of his face. There was more abrasions on the left side of his face. His skin was ripped off his right forearm. He had bruises on the joints of both hands, which seems to indicate that he was literally fighting someone with his hands.
Right.
He had a fracture of the frontal bone of his skull that was really deep and nearly 7 inches long.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. He also had hemorrhages in his temporalis muscles, which could have been due to a blunt force trauma. And the autopsy states that it probably, once he was hit with whatever he was hit with in this way,
he died.
Where this hemorrhage began, he probably immediately suffered loss of coordination, right after this trauma happened, which could have definitely sped up his death due to hypothermia.
Right.
Because he wouldn't have been able to get himself together to fight off the hypothermia, basically. So those were weird. The last one in that group of 3 was Zenaida Kolmogorov, who was the one whose picture was found with Igor. She was the farthest body from the rest of the group, and she was found with blood around her body, but it wasn't determined if it actually came from her or if it was from someone else. Her cause of death was hypothermia due to a violent accident.
Oh.
That's what it stated.
So she froze to death because of violent.
Yeah, I guess. That's a
Really make
There
any
wasn't a
sense.
lot for hers. But what is a real bummer is after all of these people were found, they had to wait until the mountain began to thaw in the spring to find the rest of them.
Under.
Yeah.
They didn't find them until May.
May 4th.
So it's almost 2 full months after.
Yeah. So that's rough. So, the last 4 people, the last 4 group members, were instructor Alexander Zolotarov, engineer Nikolai Thibodeau-Brignolov, and students Alexander Kolovatov and Ludmila Dubanina. I think I said it right.
Alright, you gave it your
Again,
best
I
shot.
apologize. I'm really giving it my all. They were found in kind of like a gully downslope from the tree where the other one, the first 2 were found.
These injuries get super real.
This is where it gets real
if you
weird.
have a weak stomach, just fast forward 25 minutes.
And the 4 of these people, their deaths were not due to hypothermia.
Nope.
They were also, these 4 were found to be they were very clothed.
Right, and
much
some of them
more
are
clothed
wearing
than the rest.
each other's.
Yes,
clothes.
and they were definitely found to be wearing other skiers, the hikers' clothes. They could have even taken clothing off of the dead.
Right.
Which could explain why some of the other one aren't as dressed as you would think.
Right.
These 4 had taken so much precaution that they'd actually dug themselves into the ground to stave off the cold. The cold. I said cold.
The cold. It's okay.
They'd actually dug themselves into the ground to stave off the cold, which is like a survival tactic because you're warmer inside there.
Makes sense.
And they had actually placed branches from the cedar tree around themselves in those ditches to, keep to not have contact with the walls with the snowy walls.
It's
basically.
interesting that they had time to do that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like so basically they were trying to minimize their contact with the snow with these branches. And it also appeared that they had started a fire for at least a small period of time. Another fire. So
that takes time.
Yeah, and it also kind of shows
you wouldn't do that in a panic.
Yeah, and this can't be one singular event, it feels like, because these people are having different experiences in different time frames, and they're dying at different times and in different ways.
Huh.
So it's like, I don't know. The autopsy report was done by Dr. Boris Vozrozdeny. And he stated that all of the 4 of these people, their internal injuries were similar to that, like Ash said, of someone who had been in a car crash. And it required that much force
But
to
they
cause
didn't
these
have
injuries.
like much external damage.
Exactly.
Not damage, but like.
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of soft tissue
Right.
damage, like like the other people kind of had some weird stuff. A lot of these people didn't even have any, like, a lot of bruising.
Marks or anything.
So these ones, let's start with Zolotarev. He had crushed ribs and a legitimately crushed in chest. Like, everything in his chest was broken.
Gosh.
Massive internal damage. No soft tissue damage or bruising, but like I say, massive internal damage.
How do you have that much internal damage without soft tissue damage?
That's why it's so bizarre. Because it's not even bruising.
What could do that?
Well, and Zolotarev was also missing his eyes. Like they weren't there. Like he had no eyes. Like you have 2 eyes, he had 0 eyes. Yeah. He also had 5 broken ribs on either side of his body. He had an open wound on the side of his head with exposed bone. And it looks like on the autopsy report it says both Zolotarev and Dubinina have an interesting pattern of injuries. They are very similar in direction and force despite differences in shape, height, and body composition of the two. This would suggest that whatever caused these injuries was not a single uniform event, like an avalanche.
I've said so many times because I'm straight up stumped.
We're stumping everybody. He also, weirdly enough, was found with a camera strung around his neck.
And they never released the photos from that camera.
And
right?
why did he grab his camera? Like, they ran out of those tents. They didn't even take clothes. Some of them. They didn't take knives. They didn't take anything.
He took his camera.
And he took his camera. And it turns out that the camera that he had around his neck, Yuri Yudin, the guys that survived this whole thing, said that camera, he had never seen it. So they had a few cameras on this trip that they were taking pictures with, and Yuri said that camera was a hidden camera. Like, he was like, he had that camera and I've never seen it.
Are we saying this is like a photo camera or a video
Yeah, like
camera?
well, it's 59.
I don't know about that time.
So he's basically saying there was a lot of cameras on this trip. I've never seen that one.
I don't like that.
And that, like, this guy, Zolotarev, like, might have been hiding this camera.
Why?
Exactly. There's just a lot of questions.
Please keep going.
So investigators claim that the film got damaged in water.
It didn't.
But
I
something's
think
weird.
They have
I think that
they
camera
don't.
has some pictures on it that might explain what's going on.
Oh man.
And again, we're going to get into theories later about this. We're going to lay them all out for you, and we'll discuss which ones we think are more likely. But, like, we're going to go back to this camera.
Actually, part of me doesn't want answers.
I know, we might not want the answers that are the truth here, because I think they're scarier than what we can come up with. So, Dubinina was found. Now, she by far has the most
worst.
insane injuries. She was found with her head tilted back and her mouth open wide like she was screaming. And I've seen pictures, because you can go online and you can see all the pictures from
Guess
this
who
thing.
didn't do that? Raise your hand. Me.
Elena did do that.
Nope.
Because
No,
I always
thank
do
you.
that.
Not interested. See you later.
They're
Goodbye.
pretty fascinating, though.
Yeah, I'm sure, but I'm not
And the picture of
about that
Dubinina
life.
is exactly how I described it. It literally looks like she's screaming. It's pretty scary. Yeah. So...
So you looked at a photo of her eyeless.
Yeah, but she was frostbitten and frozen, so it's a little different. It's not like a fresh...
Yeah, it still sounds horrible.
Yeah,
You're also
it's
an
awful.
autopsy technician, and I
Exactly.
Care, so.
I've seen much worse.
The worst I've seen is dead ends.
Yeah, I've seen much worse than this. So, Dubinina was also... Now, this is the clothing she was found wearing compared to everybody else. She was found wearing a short sleeve shirt, a long sleeve shirt, 2 sweaters, underwear, long socks, 2 pairs of pants, and the outer pants were burnt by fire. And she had a hat on and 2 pairs of socks. She also had cut up a sweater and used it to wrap around her feet as well. So she was wearing a lot of clothes.
Yeah.
And some of them were burned again. Like,
So
why
they
is
had
everybody
been
getting
previously
burned? Like, it's weird.
Well, I wonder if she took those from other people.
Yeah, maybe those might have been the ones that were on the first 2
Right.
that had the fire going. I mean, who knows? Because they had some burn injuries. Her injuries were the worst and definitely most bizarre, though. There was some soft tissue missing, but that can be attributed to frostbite.
Okay.
So we do have to keep that in mind. She had soft tissue damage around her eyes, her eyebrows, her left temporal area and there was bone exposed in that area. She was also missing her tongue, which it is stated in several places that I found that it looked like it had been torn out from the root.
Where's the root of your tongue?
It looked like it had literally been yanked out of her mouth. Like torn out. Yeah.
Ay.
Now, one might want to immediately say maybe an animal ate it.
But it was yanked.
But 1, why would she be the only one whose tongue was eaten by an animal? And 2, these people were found under like 12 feet of snow.
Right.
So
that
no
happened
animal was getting to them.
before.
Yeah. And she was missing her eyes. Her nose was completely busted. It was broken and completely flattened. 4 ribs were broken on her right side, and 6 were broken on her left side. Her upper lip was gone, and her upper teeth and jaw were like exposed, like horror movie style.
Yeah.
She had a massive hemorrhage in her heart's right atrium, a huge bruise on her left thigh, and this is even weirder. This is gonna blow your face off. Her stomach had about 100 grams of coagulated blood in it, which indicates that her blood was flowing and her heart was pumping when her tongue was ripped out of her mouth.
I don't want to know any of
Which
that.
means she was alive when her tongue was removed.
No, goodbye.
So regardless of
Podcast
how it was
forever.
removed, she was alive when it happened. Yeah. Her
I am
official
so
cause of
sorry for
death,
these
it's awful. It's awful. And the official cause of death for her was the heart hemorrhage, because it was massive.
In their families, can
And
you
the internal
imagine
injuries.
if that happened to your family member
No.
and you just never have any answer?
No. I can't even
Wow,
fathom
that
that.
makes me feel so sorry, and like my heart hurts.
It's literally, I mean, this is like horror. Like, horror
This is
happens
worse.
for them to die. Like, this is true
Yes.
horror. So that was Dubinina. And Kolovatov had a broken nose and a deformed neck. But his autopsy report doesn't share a lot more. And it might have been that he possibly was more decomposed than the other ones. So
Right.
when they found them, so maybe it was
There
a little
was a
tough.
lot to go on.
Brignolel had multiple fractures to his temporal bone in his skull, a big bruise on his upper lip, and a hemorrhage of the lower forearm. The doctor ruled out an accidental fall on like a rock or something for that break because it was such a massive and really weird fracture, they said. It just didn't make sense to that he like fell or something and broke it.
Right.
So that's weird. All of those last 4 bodies, it seemed like their chests had been crushed with immense pressure.
Okay.
One of the things that a lot of people like to go to with like all these weird, like people being in their underwear in negative 24-degree weather, is called paradoxical undressing. It's like a phenomenon that only happens in like, I think like 20% of hypothermia cases, where like your body starts tricking itself into
think you're
believing that you're
warm.
getting hot. So you start like frantically taking your clothes off. But it's really just
you're
you
actually
going into
fucking cold as
hypothermia
fuck.
and dying.
But that doesn't make sense because why would
yeah.
you suffer all those astronomically insane
Exactly, and it
injuries?
doesn't explain the injuries, and it doesn't explain why they ran out of the tents in
So
the first
check
place.
that off your list.
So we
Let's
can
know.
check that off, but a lot of people bring it up. Some of the known cameras in the group, they were able to get photos off of. There's a lot of photos of the group like hike on the way up here, And there was one from February 2nd, right before they set up camp, and everybody's happy and everything looks normal. So there's nothing weird to see there. Yuri Yudin, the survivor, he testified that Alexander Kolovatov kept an avid personal diary, and that it was with him the whole time, and that he remembers it being with him when he left that village. Like, he had it. That diary has never been found.
Why?
And there was also a camera that went missing, too.
I mean, it could be buried under crazy
It's
amounts
true.
of snow.
But it's weird that those things, because you would think those things would be in the campsite.
Right.
So they would know where to find
Either
those.
the campsite or on.
And that campsite they were able to get to. And they were able to search it. So the fact that those two things aren't there seems like they were taken from there.
Of course.
For a reason. And the fact that this is like a personal diary and a camera that could have a lot of information that maybe I don't know, a Soviet government might not want people to know about.
Okay, we can get to that theory, but why would the Soviet government really go that hard and crush people in torture style?
Well, if they were, I mean, we're gonna get into this theory in a couple of minutes, but if they're doing, I mean, there's a lot of nuclear testing and stuff. If they were, maybe these people stumbled into an area that they were doing some kind of weird ass weapons testing, and they got in the middle of it. And maybe they had started seeing weird shit leading up to this, and the government doesn't want people to know about it.
Well,
it could be totally
do
classified information.
That much horrible things to them.
Well, these weapons that they're testing are meant to
Do you
destroy.
think they were testing the weapons on them?
They could have. I mean, who knows? That's one of the theories, and that's one of the really scary theories.
Yeah.
And in fact, later at the people's funerals, it was mentioned by some witnesses that the bodies appeared to have a weird deep orange tan.
Yeah.
And
their hair too.
Their hair looked gray, like it had no pigment. Again, those are people saying things, so maybe it's not. This could be hearsay, but it's still weird. And to further this whole theory, some of the articles of clothing found with the bodies contained high levels of radiation.
Yeah.
In particular, Yuri Krivonenchenko had very high levels of radiation on his clothes when they tested him. Now, Yuri Krivonenchenko was once working in, it's called Chelyabinsk 40, which is a secret nuclear plutonium plant that experienced a disaster on September 29th, 1957. Basically, it was a radioactive leak. This incident became known as the Khushtamkoy incident. Krivonenchenko was among some of the people that were sent to clean this up.
Oh.
He was an engineer, though. So Yuri would know enough to not keep those clothes from that day. And he certainly probably wouldn't be wearing them 2 years later without washing them or anything. So that is a thing that's weird, but it just doesn't make sense to why his would have reacted that high.
Uh-huh.
And on another note, why the fuck did they test them for radiation in the first place?
Oh, that's not something that just pops up. You have to be tested for it.
Think about it. If you found some dead people out in the woods, are the
for
investigators
some,
going
radiation.
to test them for radiation?
Especially not in the snow.
That's literally never something that would come up in from the beginning of an
autopsy.
investigation. They would never, radiation does not come up as a thing, let's just test them, let's just see.
Wow.
They have to have tested them because they knew something.
But they never said what they knew and why
Of
they were
course
testing
not.
for it.
Oh, young Ash.
I'm young.
The government does a lot of shit that they don't want you to know about.
I know, it scares me.
You're going to learn a lot during this podcast about your government. We'll go into some shit.
I'm going to become I don't know.
Yeah.
I
So...
already thought I was a hippie.
No, it's going to get weird. It's going to freak you out.
More?
Oh, yeah. Some of these.
I feel like I'm you guys right now that are listening, and I feel like I'm just experiencing this for the first time.
Yeah.
Because I thought I did some research, but I guess I didn't.
So let's.
Wikipedia, let me just tell you, has the basic amount of the basicest.
The basicest.
The basicest amount of basics for you and for your viewing pleasure.
I go hard when I do. So, all right, let's talk about some of the theories here. Now that we have all the information.
Oh man.
So one of the theories, let's just go with the one that's gonna make people be like, come on. But then at the end of it, you're gonna be like,
The Yeti.
maybe. No, we'll get to that one. The first one we're gonna go to is aliens or extraterrestrials.
Maybe, dude.
So now, let's see. On March 31st, so right after this whole thing was happening, a group of rescue, this was like between when they found the first set and when they found the second set. There was people searching through them. So on March 31st, a group of rescue and search volunteers saw glowing, pulsating orbs in the sky.
I read that.
One of these search and rescue people, named Valentin Yakomenko, said, and I quote, "It happened early in the morning while it was still dark. Viktor Meshurkarov, who stood guard that night, left the tent and saw a large glowing sphere in the sky. He woke everyone up. He watched this orb, or disk, for about 20 minutes until it disappeared behind the mountain. We saw it in the southeast direction from our tent. It was moving in a northern direction. This event freaked everyone out. We were sure that this event was somehow involved in the death of the Dyatlov group."
I'm not okay.
So,
I've said it once, I'll say it probably 500 more times during this. I'm not okay.
So that's weird. And it turns out that these pulsating orbs were seen
Multiple
in January,
people saw them.
February, and March by students, geologists, natives, and even local military. Even Mansi hunters in the area saw them too and reported them. And in early April, several testimonies were taken from local soldiers who said that they thought they saw UFOs on February 17th around 6:40 a.m. And they all described them as the same thing, slow, pulsating, moving orbs that were moving from south to north in a weird, like, cloud of dust or fog. The guy who was in charge of the investigation, named Lev Ivanov, actually gave an interview in the early 90s where he told this reporter that during the investigation, he and E.P. Maslenikov, who he must have been part of the investigation as well, but he named him. He said both noticed that the pines in the forest in this area were burned on the top.
What?
Yeah. So he also claims that the member of the Soviet Congress, along with his advisor, forced him to take out all the references of any kind of UFO or weird, strange shit.
Do you think that the government there is friends with aliens? Or has some kind of agreement with them?
No, I think that they're like our government and they cover this shit up because they don't want us to know about it. This is exactly what our government does too.
Going on?
The government knows way more than what they tell us.
Are they gonna listen to our podcast and then fuck with us?
Please don't.
I don't want it. I'm just a sweet hairdresser.
You are.
She's just saying all the information. It's her.
Exactly, I'm just passing it on. So, actually, Mansi hunters had actually even drawn pictures of these flying spheres, and they made them take them all out. So this guy was suspected, he was believed to say, and I quote, "I suspected at the time and am almost sure now that these bright flying spheres had a direct connection to this group's death."
It makes sense.
So that's weird. There's some things
There's a
in there
correlation.
that are at least weird to consider. So, another theory is that there was a military or government experiment that went tragically awry.
Now, this one I need you to explain to me because in my head, it just doesn't make sense.
So,
I'm so naive.
the Soviet government could have been testing some kind of classified weapon.
So there were people there testing the weapons, is what you're telling me.
Well,
Perhaps.
there's an entire, like branch of people that test these weapons.
But there was humans there
Yes.
testing the weapons.
Yes, we have not in 59 we had not advanced to using AI.
Okay. I don't even know what AI is, so
My God. Artificial intelligence.
here we are.
Yeah. So
I have none of that.
So Yuri Yudin is actually a supporter of this theory. He thinks that this is what happened.
Okay. He's the survivor.
Yes.
Okay.
So he thinks that the group maybe stumbled on some kind of crazy covert testing ground, like accidentally.
Okay.
Like this wasn't planned. And that they were basically dispatched by the government as a result of this, because they had
So
stumbled
they
to
were
this
quote
thing.
unquote taken care of,
Yeah.
essentially.
These search and rescue people named Valentin Yakamenko said, and I quote, "It happened early in the morning while it was still dark. Viktor Mesherkarov, who stood guard that night, left the tent and saw a large glowing sphere in the sky. He woke everyone up. He watched this orb, or disk, for about 20 minutes until it disappeared behind the mountain. We saw it in the southeast direction from our tent. It was moving in a northern direction. This event freaked everyone out. We were sure that this event was somehow involved in the death of the Dyatlov.
I'm not okay. I
So,
said it once, I'll say it probably 500 more times during this. I'm not okay.
so that's weird. And it turns out that these pulsating orbs were seen
Multiple
in
people saw
January,
them.
February, and March by students, geologists, natives, and even local military. Even Mansi hunters in the area saw them too and reported them. And in early April, several testimonies were taken from local soldiers who said that they thought they saw UFOs on February 17th around 6:40 a.m. And they all described them as the same thing, slow, pulsating, moving orbs that were moving from south to north in a weird, like, cloud of dust or fog. The guy who was in charge of the investigation, named Lev Ivanov, actually gave an interview in the early 90s where he told this reporter that during the investigation, he and E.P. Maslenikov, he must have been part of the investigation as well, but he named him. He said both noticed that the pines in the forest in this area were burned on the top.
What?
Yeah. So he also claims that the member of the Soviet Congress, along with his advisor, forced him to take out all the references of any kind of UFO or weird, strange shit.
Do you think that the government there is friends with the aliens? Or has some kind of agreement with them?
No, I think that they're like our government and they cover this shit up because they don't want us to know about it. This is exactly what our government
they know
does
what's going
too.
on?
The government knows way more than what they tell us.
Are they gonna listen to our podcast and then fuck with us?
Please don't.
I don't want it. I'm just a sweet hairdresser.
You are.
She's just saying all the information. It's her.
Exactly.
That was a
Just passing
repeat,
it
by
on.
the way. Not
So-
sure why that happened.
Actually, Mansi hunters had actually even drawn pictures of these flying spheres, and they made them take them all out. So this guy was suspected, he was believed to say, and I quote, "I suspected at the time and am almost sure now that these bright flying spheres had a direct connection to this group's death."
It makes sense.
So that's weird. There's some things
There's a
in there
correlation.
that are at least weird to consider. So, another theory is that there was a military or government experiment that went tragically awry.
Now, this one I need you to explain to me because in my head, it just doesn't make sense.
So,
I'm so naive.
the Soviet government could have been testing some kind of classified weapon.
So there were people there testing the weapons, is what you're telling me.
Well,
Perhaps.
there's an entire, like branch of people that test these weapons.
But there was humans there testing the weapons.
Yes, we have not in 59 we had not advanced to using AI.
Okay. I don't even know what AI
So,
is. So,
My God. Artificial intelligence.
here we are.
Yeah. So
I have none of that.
So Yuri Yudin is actually a supporter of this theory. He thinks that this is what happened.
Okay. He's the survivor.
Yes.
Okay.
So he thinks that the group maybe stumbled on some kind of crazy covert testing ground, like accidentally.
Okay.
Like this wasn't planned. And that they were basically dispatched by the government as a result of this because they had
So
stumbled
they were
to this
quote
thing.
unquote taken care of,
Yeah.
essentially, is what you're telling me.
They think this because this is why, because the investigation was very hurried and it was very secretive.
And
Even now,
the
the Soviet government doesn't want you asking about this. And they don't want you digging into it. They
closed the mountain for 3 years afterwards.
Exactly. And it's like, why?
I have the chills.
So, this could be explained by some weird things.
Why would they rip her tongue out?
That Yudin saw.
What did Yudin see?
So,
Fuck!
Yudin claimed to see, at least from what I saw.
I feel like I might
things,
cry. I'm just overwhelmed.
You are very overwhelmed by this. I hope everybody feels this way.
I hope you guys do.
So Yudin was used to identify some of the items that they found.
Okay.
Since he was with these people, he knew what was going on. So Yudin saw, amongst their items, a torn piece of fabric that resembled something that looked like it could have come from a soldier's coat.
Okay.
That he said was not there.
He
He also found a pair of glasses and skis that didn't belong to anyone there.
Okay.
That's weird.
That's really fucking weird.
So there was also testimony from Yudin that he saw documents that said that the investigation actually began 2 weeks before the official discovery of the camp. So that would indicate
So they say that it started
that the
on
camp
20th.
was found 2 weeks before they quote unquote found it.
So
Or
they
even
did find
further,
it and
that the
recovering it.
investigation began 2 weeks before the camp was quote unquote found.
Right.
So if that's the case,
weird.
then the government
Was
really
covering
cleaned
things
this up. Yeah. So there's something where maybe they were testing some kind of like infrasound experimental weapon. And infrasound experimental weapons would be like using sounds that are on such crazy frequencies that they cause havoc in the human body.
Okay.
And these kind of infrasound weapons would cause like feelings, and this is like they've done experiments on people with these, and people can like there's
And
research
the people
on
go
this.
crazy?
Well, and people report feeling like an immense feeling of dread or panic, and like they can sometimes feel like they're being attacked by like paranormal things,
And
or
that's
like,
why they clawed the inside.
and it also
of the tent
causes
out.
sickness because it messes with your inner ear, and once you fuck with your inner ear, it
Your
like throws your
equilibrium and your whole
everything
body's off.
And so this would cause dread, panic,
This
paranoia,
is fucking wild.
and full-on sickness. Yeah. So that's something. So that's something to think about. That's a good theory, I think. I mean, that's one of the ones that I really think stands
Yeah.
the test of time. So another theory is that the local Manzi tribe had followed and attacked this group for what they saw as trespassing on sacred
I
land.
don't like to think that.
This one doesn't hold up. It's very unlikely because the land they were on was not considered sacred
Mansi
by
land.
the Mansi tribe.
Right.
It was their land, but they didn't consider it sacred. And they were using a Mansi trail that was set out for them.
And multiple people had hiked, like, around there before, right?
Yeah, and
Not the same trail, but around there.
so some researchers say that maybe Soviets had attempted to hide any evidence of this, if that's what did happen, like if the Mansis did attack them. And that would have been because they didn't want to start, like,
A war.
a war with the Mansi tribe kind of thing, because basically they wanted to, in the future, exploit the oil-rich soil that exists on the Mansi tribe's land.
Wow.
So, but again, that doesn't seem
It's
likely.
a little far-fetched.
Because these people, the Mansis, assisted in the search and rescue. Like, they actually helped with it.
Okay.
So, that one's unlikely, so we'll scratch it off. The other one that a lot of people go back to is the avalanche.
But I don't think that makes sense.
Avalanche doesn't make a lot of sense.
Avalanches don't rip your fucking eyes out.
No, they
Or your
definitely
tongue
don't.
from the root.
They do not. And this place isn't prone to, like, I mean, a lot of these places do have a lot of avalanches, but this one isn't particularly prone to avalanches. There was also a thin layer of snow over most of it, which doesn't coincide with an avalanche.
Yeah, there would be a shit ton of fucking snow everywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, their tent position was on a very bad area if there was an avalanche, like I said earlier.
Uh-huh.
But the problem is people with several broken ribs and, like, literally crushed in chests wouldn't be able to dig themselves out of an avalanche.
Yeah.
And these people clearly were moving about.
And they wouldn't have been that far apart from each
Yeah.
other. It just doesn't. And they wouldn't have clawed out of their tent, most likely.
I mean, they could have.
Well,
the
actually,
clawing
that
out of the
makes
tent
sense.
makes sense because if they heard the avalanche coming, they would want to get the fuck out of there.
Right.
But their footprints were like agile. It looked like they were moving fine. And again, with a crushed chest and broken ribs, you're not trampsing through snow.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. And another weird thing with this is there's a picture of the camp before this whatever unknown event occurred.
Uh-huh.
And there's a ski pole that's sitting in a position, like stuck in the snow,
Is it
in a
the
vertical
same way
position. Afterwards, that same ski pole is in the same position and hasn't moved.
So
So if an
that didn't
avalanche came,
happen.
it would have knocked the ski pole down.
Of course.
And also the members of the group died at different times, which
Yeah.
doesn't make an avalanche likely. Like,
No.
they made camps in different areas, and they tried to... It just doesn't make any sense. So, I say no to avalanche.
Scratch it off.
Another one is, I think this might be the last one, actually, that
Is
I
it
have.
the Yeti?
Is the Yeti theory.
I feel like it would have had to have been multiple Yetis.
Well, that snowman comment,
Oh, fuck up.
now we know the snowmen are real?
That also falls into the
Very
military
nice.
one, though.
It kind of does, yeah. Like, maybe they were hiding the fact that the Yeti exists.
No, I'm saying, like, maybe they were calling, like, the military people that they stumbled across.
The
The
snowmen?
snowmen.
Maybe.
Far-fetched.
It's a
I don't
theory.
know, I think it makes sense.
I like it. I could get behind that.
The snowmen exist as a good band name.
But I also would wonder why they would use a code word for it if they were trying to warn people. Like, why wouldn't they just be like, now we know that the corrupt government exists?
Because that is way too obvious.
But, like, then they're leaving it up to us to decipher.
Well, what did the article say?
I don't know what the article... Well, that's the thing. The article didn't contain any information about what exactly the snowmen are or anything.
Oh, man.
So who knows?
Not
And-
me. Not anyone.
Well, the Namansi do believe in something called a Mank or a Menkvi, which are basically like super angry Yetis. And they're super aggressive, super violent beasts that they believe live in the Ural Mountains.
Okay.
So that is part of their like lore, you know.
Yeah.
The Mansi searchers that were part of this were, by all accounts, noticeably like very upset and like nervous finding these people. And the conditions of their bodies like freaked
Well,
them
they were
out.
probably scared. That's their home, too.
Well,
like,
and they
live
immediately attributed it to these,
there. To
you
the
know,
Yetis.
Menkvis that they believe in, because they also had believed that Menkvis had killed a group of caribou or reindeer that were belonging to their tribe like weeks before this.
Oh,
So they had
wow.
already had something happen that they were like, "Do you think these are the Yetis?" And then all of a sudden, all these, you know,
I'm not gonna
young
rule
Russians are, you know, demolished on a mountain. So it's not so crazy.
it out. People believe in Bigfoot.
And what's weird is there was something that came out that like referenced Yetis. And so the American Embassy in Nepal sent a document to the Department of State in Washington, and it was entitled, so this is like a government thing. It was entitled Regulations Covering Mountain Climbing Expeditions in Nepal Relating to Yeti.
Okay, so that's
So
legit.
they kind of acknowledge that that's something.
Right.
And it contained 3 regulations that climbers must abide by should they encounter a Yeti.
What were the regulations, do you know?
I don't know, I couldn't find it.
That's okay.
But the date on this document was December 20th, 1959. So it was a couple years after this happened that this regulation came out.
Like, oh, just in case you fucking come across a Yeti, be prepared. Like,
Yeah.
no one's ever gonna be fucking prepared to come across a fucking Yeti.
I never want to come across one, and I also don't want to be prepared to come across one.
I mean, personally, I never want to hike. I don't even like to
Yeah,
hike through hills.
I'm
So
with
I don't
you.
think I'll stumble across this problem.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be, you know, poking my head into Siberia anytime soon.
I don't
so
even want to hike a hill.
No, I don't want to go into
I'm
the
not
forest,
active.
so I'm definitely not going to go on a mountain. But interestingly enough, in February 2nd in 2008, so not too long ago, an investigative conference was organized by Ural State Technical University and the
Russia?
Dyatlov Foundation in Yekaterinburg, Russia. Something like that.
Yeah.
Yekaterinburg.
Alright, one more time. I'm just gonna tell.
Yekaterinburg. This was run by 6 surviving members of the search party, the original search party, and 31 technical experts. And they basically went back and looked at all the evidence, and they just like researched the hell out of
What did they
it.
say?
They concluded that the deaths were likely the unintended result of a secret military test.
Fuck!
Yes.
Why? I wouldn't even want to come to that conclusion if I was like on that board. I'd be like, actually, I'm leaving.
It's
and
a
time for
dangerous
lunch.
conclusion to come to.
The most dangerous.
Especially in
game.
Russia, man.
Nope, I don't want to go anywhere near that.
No, thank you. People can trek up there today.
No, thank you.
You can take a little hike through Dyatlov Pass.
1, 2, 3, not it.
But people are encouraged to not do it in groups of 9.
Why?
I don't know why. I think that's just a random thing they came up with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, they just were like, you know what? Just don't do
bring
it
10
in 9,
people.
but like do it in 8 or 10.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe they don't like odd numbers.
They don't.
Yeah, I don't know.
Fuck, dude, that was a heavy one.
So yeah, that's Dyatlov
Are
Pass.
we done here? Because I gotta go home and somehow figure out how to sleep.
Yeah, I think we're done here.
My
I
REM
think
cycle is gonna be disturbed.
So, you know, sweet dreams of Siberia
No thanks.
and losing your tongue on a mountainside
No. From the root.
from the root
Bye.
while you're alive.
Fudge.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, nobody, we don't have an actual closure to this. We don't really know. So, I feel like this is going to be debated forever.
I feel no sense of relief whatsoever.
I feel like we're just leaving everybody with them.
I came here feeling
come
like
to
a
your
little
own conclusion.
disturbed, and now I feel like I'll never be the same.
That's my job.
Is it?
Is to make people feel like they'll never be the same.
Does it pay well?
It doesn't, but
No.
but it makes me feel good inside.
You're so weird. You're a real weirdo.
I'm a real weirdo.
Listen to the second episode.
Bringing it back.
Ah.
Yeah. So, come to your own conclusions, friends.
All right, guys. So that is the end of this episode. Hopefully, you enjoyed hearing and learning more about the Dyatlov Pass incident. Pretty crazy story, interesting conspiracy theories for sure. But I did not live stream this today, so it will not be up on my Twitch. But if you would like to check out a live stream, you can find me at twitch.com/JaxJethro. And like and subscribe if you'd like to follow along. Reminder that the next episode, episode 4, will be on the previous world on 1.20. But after that, starting episode 5, we'll be back on this world. So please comment down below if you have any recommendations, kind of ways to improve my streaming, or like the video quality, anything like that. But I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.